I think ask for help as often as you need it. Kind of going back to what I said previously, it's like I think a lot of us, especially small business owners, solo entrepreneurs like myself, we feel like we have to wear all the hats all the time and be the best hat wearer. And there's somebody out there who knows way more than you, who is an expert, who lives and breathes the things that you're struggling with. And the not the cost, but the investment you'll make in that partnership will absolutely pay itself back, whether it's in pure income and revenue, whether it's lessons learned, whether it's time saved. So go out there and ask for help. And maybe you'll get it for free, maybe you'll get it relatively inexpensively. Um, but if you think you have to know all of it all the time, you're doing yourself a disservice.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7 and 8 figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where he helps startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. If you ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Kolby Goodman. And Kolby, we're going to be talking a little bit, or we're going to be going through a little bit of his journey, which started out as him always wanting to be an entrepreneur. So as early as 4 years old, he was out selling the Halloween candy he didn't want, and then in high school started a DJ company with his friend. Also did a screen printing business, and then also did a bike messenger business, and then went off to college and didn't know what he wanted to do after he graduated. Got into working at computer labs during college, and then graduated and worked at a tech help desk. Did a career in corporate IT management for a period of time. Realized that he didn't love that job or those the work he worked with, and so launched a coaching business that he started over the weekend. And the coaching business started out as a side hustle, and then over a period of time transitioned that to a full-time gig, as well as starting a second business that helps companies make their interviewing process better. So with that much as an introduction, welcome on the podcast, Kolby.
Thanks for having me, Devin. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Excited to have you on. So I just gave a quick walkthrough to a much longer journey. So why don't we rewind and unpack that a little bit, and tell us a little bit about how your journey got started selling your Halloween candy at 4 years old.
So I'm one of those rare percentages of the population who's allergic to all nuts, peanuts, walnuts, almonds. So a vast majority of my Halloween candy I would get as a kid was unedible. And I said, well, this is kind of a waste, and I'd rather have an ice cream than a Reese's, obviously. So I said, well, how can I turn these candies into something I actually want? And so I got a bunch of my folks' Tupperware. I got a big poster board and a marker, and a very crude for sale sign was created, sat in front on my front lawn for, I don't know, what probably was just a half an hour, felt like hours as a little kid. And all of a sudden, all that candy was gone. I had $5 in my pocket, and my mom and I walked to the local corner store, and I got a drumstick. And I think that's where I got hooked to the idea of working smarter instead of just harder. And I think that's the ultimate thing that I love so much about entrepreneurship, is that it encourages strategy. It rewards smart thinking. It allows you to maximize your efforts versus simply just punch a clock. And I think that's when I got my first taste of it, no pun intended. And that kind of cascaded, like you mentioned before, starting a couple businesses in high school. Even though I was working some part-time jobs, always wanted to kind of dabble in it. So with the DJ business, allowed us, my friend and I, to do quinceañeras and bat mitzvahs and dances, and have fun and have a good time, but also make some good money. And I think what happened to myself and happened to a lot of people is in college, you kind of wake up and say, well, maybe this isn't possible. Maybe this is just kind of a pipe dream. Who wants to start a business with a 22-year-old, kid, so to speak? And went out and got some hard skills. Was always technically inclined, and developed not only the ability to to do the technology and fix the computers and run the cable and install the software. But what I learned in that time and what has propelled me all the way up till today was the ability to really connect and resonate with other human beings. And unfortunately, I think we've all had our encounter with enough IT people. While they might mean the best, not the most people we've ever met. And that's definitely what I encountered rising through the ranks in IT operations. And as I was coming out of that stint, as you mentioned, and was, as I say, working with people I didn't really care about on projects.
Just to rewind just a little bit. So
Yeah.
so you're in college. You said, okay, going to go I'll put in quotes, the more traditional route, or and
Mhm.
you kind of got into IT. Now, first of all, what kind? You've done everything from bike messenger to screen printing to DJ, which is a bit of a departure and to go into IT. So, what kind of made you or gravitated you towards IT, or took you in that direction?
It was a skill set that was in demand that I had enough of a foundation in already. Being a DJ, you had to know kind of AV equipment. This was having to run cables and speakers and mixers and all that. So I had enough experience there. Um, was also kind of technically inclined as a young person. Taking apart the VCR and building my own PC in high school. And so I knew enough about it, probably enough to be dangerous, honestly. And so I was in college. I was going to school full time. There was an opening at the library at the computer lab. And I said, well, it's on campus. I can do my homework while I do it. I could see my friends. So that got me some official IT work on my resume. And then when I graduated, panicked, like I think a lot of us do when you cross the stage and all of a sudden you're an adult and you get to figure it out. And so, as you said, kind of put my entrepreneurial dreams on hold for a more traditional, stable, predictable route, and got my first job pretty quickly out of college doing IT help desk support. So the guys you'd call in to reset passwords, set up mailboxes, all those kind of rudimentary support items. And
So you're the guy that I always hate that tells me to turn it off and turn it back
turn
on.
it back on. I mean,
I've already done that 5 times and it's not working.
Yes, I was one of those guys. And so, and as much, and trust me, as much as you were frustrated at, kind of stating that, I was also frustrated asking that. And so as I kind of proved to myself that I could do this, that I could adult, that I could work in the real, quote unquote, real world, started to branch out and and ultimately looked for ways to ask for forgiveness versus permission in the work that I was doing. So in the help desk, every time that we would get a call from a VIP, so whether that was an executive, whether that was a high profile client, whether that was, an executive assistant for somebody high up there, I would always jump on those calls because it would get me away from my desk. I was getting pretty sedentary, pretty bored at just kind of answering the phones with my headset and clicking around the computer screen. So it got me out of my desk, up, into the little upper floors of the building where the leadership was. And it allowed me to really personalize the service, get in front of not only get in front of the right people, sure, but just get in front of people and rip the Band-Aid off in talking to people of high status, of high power, of high worth, and help them where needed it the most. Talking to multimillionaires who couldn't figure out how to save a word to a PDF by no fault of their own, they just needed the extra help. And so by making myself visible, by volunteering for those roles, it got me notoriety, it got me momentum, and it got me into a space where I was invaluable. And that helped me rise in the ranks. It helped me go out and get different, more interesting projects. It allowed me to secure higher titles, more pay. And it was being visible and seeking out interesting problems and seeking out the people who had those problems that allowed me to leverage myself in a relatively quick fashion in my career. And also coupled with a lack of formal technical knowledge, didn't have any certifications, did not major in IT, but get into a place of management where I found myself towards the tail end of my traditional career.
No, it sounds like it was a good journey, and sounds like it's one of those. Hey, I've got some of the innate skills or interests or
Hmm.
experience to do that. Now, at some point, so you were in the corporate IT management world for and now how many years was that, or for
About
over
a decade.
about a decade? And then at some point, you said, okay, maybe I don't quite love this job as much, or I don't love the people that I work with as much, or I
Hmm.
want a difference in, in environment and job and whatnot. Now, before we dive into kind of where you went with that, how did you kind of come to that realization, or kind of was it just kind of a gradual thing of, hey, I'm just not loving this anymore, or was there a aha moment or a light bulb moment, or kind of
Yeah.
what prompted you to start to kind of thinking there of going in a different direction?
It's a good question. For me, I think it was a slow burn. It was multiple straws that piled up upon the camel's back before it finally broke. But kind of what I realized was the problems I was solving, um, they didn't push me as much as they used to. I was getting caught up in a lot of the corporate bureaucracy and restrictions, having to get approvals, having to loop in people who didn't really matter, having to justify the impact to people who didn't believe it or didn't want it. And it just was I was being bogged down by the job of having to do my job. And I think that ultimately got me to a point where I had realized I'm working with people that don't vibe with me, that I don't really like, who I don't think really like me, on projects that I didn't have my heart in anymore, and ultimately making a bunch of money for people that I never met, other executives, other investors that, kind of were these arbiters on high. And I realized, like, this is not a pattern I want to continue building on for the rest of my career. Um, and so as I was kind of having this change of heart and doing some introspection, I took that statement of, like, what is the value that I want to put into the world? And as I did some introspection, as I looked to others to get their perspective, it was my ability to advocate for myself, to go and um, connect with the right people and understand them wholly so that I could provide solutions. And I said, okay, now that innate skill and built up skill, coupled with my ability to rise in the ranks, to gain higher status and pay and title in my career, even at a disadvantage of a lack of a formal technical knowledge, putting those two things together was the revelation of me starting my coaching business.
And I say, okay, I'm gonna go or kind of go down that route. I'm gonna start the coaching business, shift gears so that I can, work with the people I do or don't want to work with, do the job that
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy, and kind of switch gears a bit. So now you get into coaching. Now, how did you figure out kind of who you were going to coach, or where you were going to coach, or what people you're going to coach, or how do you build a business, or how did you go about building a business around that, that desire to switch gears?
Uh, Kind of like you mentioned, had, I just kind of did it in a weekend, but that weekend took a few years to come to fruition. Every overnight success takes a long time, right? And what I had realized was that I was using knowledge or a lack of knowledge as an excuse, as a way to productively procrastinate. I read all the books, I watched all the videos, um, and I kind of came to a point where I could continue kicking the can down the road, or I could just launch. Um, and it was at that point, and taking my experience in IT and working around a lot of project managers, product managers, one thing I took with me and took me a long time to learn, but try to continue to iterate on is a project manager of a software company I used to work for told me, Kolby, if version 1.0 of a product is perfect, you're too late. And so instead of keeping it in the back end, and instead of keeping up my website in development, went out there, hit publish, put myself out there on my friends and my family, went on to local forums, Nextdoor, Craigslist, local subreddits, and say, hey, like, I'm Kolby. I help people find new jobs. I'm good. I'm an expert at resume writing and interview preparation. If you need help, I'm giving away, complimentary 45-minute sessions of coaching. All I ask for in return is that you maintain in contact with me. And then if my help is successful for you, you leave me a testimonial somewhere online. And that's how I got my first 10 clients. They were pro bono, but it allowed me a lot of opportunity to learn and iterate things I wouldn't have been able to know until I got out there and met with my customers and supported them where they were at and had them ask me really interesting questions that I would have never guessed were going to come my way. And so my big lesson there was simply just launch. Try not to let your own concern and anxiety and fear hold you back, which I know is super cliche, but I think the fear of failure, uh, you can't let that take over your opportunity to action. And again, I say this, I'm not saying this as a person who's learned that lesson. I'm practicing it. I haven't perfected that approach. But that's how I got into it, just launching, getting those first couple clients, and then not only doing it, but believing I could do it, getting over that imposter syndrome so that I could start charging a little, and then a little bit more, and then a little bit more, and then a lot more, to a place where, like you mentioned, about a year later, after moonlighting as a career coach while still doing my traditional 9 to 5, realized that I could either do one job great or two jobs kind of okay. And that was when I put in my 2 weeks at my traditional job and have not looked back since.
Oh, that's awesome. So now you put in your 2 weeks, you switch over from part-time to full-time, and you make this your full-time job. Now, sometimes you make that leap and you look back and you regret it because you did it too early. You make the leap and you regret it because you did it too late, or you happen to time it about right. And then you also were, trying to figure things out. And sometimes you have money rain down from the skies. Other times for years you're teetering on the verge of bankruptcy or somewhere in the middle. So walk us through as you make that from kind of the side hustle, side gig to the full-time gig. How did that go, and how did that
Yeah.
transition go for you?
Yeah. So I was very lucky that I had other expert help. So I had my financial planner who I got pretty early on, just not knowing a ton about not personal finance, but long term finance, retirement, Ross, 401ks. And so I got connected with a gentleman who, ultimately became my best friend, and a groomsman in my wedding who was my financial planner. And I told him, hey, this is what I want to do. I'm looking to leave IT. I'm looking to start this coaching business. How do I do this smart from a financial standpoint? And so we set benchmarks, we set savings goals, we set income attainments and triggers. And so when I put in that 2 weeks, I was financially sound so that if I didn't get a single paying client for a whole year, I could continue to pay all of my bills. And I think the mindset that he helped me create was I was renting my freedom. This was not a permanent state. I could go out and experiment and try and fail and learn and try again. And if in 365 days, it doesn't look the way I want to, it's not working the way I want it to, I can always pivot back. And I think that levity of situation and the permission, like I said, to rent, I called it renting my freedom. Let's try this out. Let's experiment. Let's try things that would be out of a realm, because there was no failure. That just was learning or just kind of going back to plan B. That mentally really helped me, because the first year I was lucky, surpassed my traditional income in that first year. I think by luck, but I think sometimes there was some process there. But even if that hadn't happened, I think the levity and the permission to say I didn't have to fully succeed 100% in that first year allowed me to build and to secure the income, because there wasn't enough pressure versus I have to do this or I don't make rent, which I think can be a big pressure for a lot of people that even the best of us find hard to overcome.
No, makes perfect sense. Sounds like it was a good period of learning and figuring things out and working it out, and with a good amount of planning, made it gave you enough runway to make it successful. So now, how long ago did you transition to doing this full time, and kind of walk us through how's things progressed to where you're at today?
Yeah. So that was 10 years ago, when I put in my 2 weeks. It's been an amazing journey, being able to build a lifestyle, be able to not have to clock in, be somewhere at a certain time. Pre-pandemic had a little office space that I could call my own. Post-pandemic, working from home, having a 10-foot commute. It's allowed me to help over 4,000 individuals find amazing new jobs, get paid well, make successful and happy transitions in their careers and their life. Been able to do over 250 keynotes and workshops all around the country. And I touched on lifestyle too, because I think a business should contribute to your lifestyle. It shouldn't be your lifestyle. And for me, it's allowed me to, like I said, stay home. I have a almost 2-year-old running around the halls right now, if you can't hear that. And it's allowed me to be at home near him since his birth. It's allowed me to take, quite a few, weeks off and days off and cut out early. And I've been able to really spend a lot of quality time with my little guy that would not have happened if I was having a traditional 9 to 5. So the lifestyle's been great. It's allowed me to pay for a wedding and my wife, pay for our honeymoon, buy this house that I'm living in now. It's very surreal. It's very humbling to know that I'm able to live the lifestyle that I want while coincidentally helping people who really want to build something similar do the same.
No, it sounds like it's been a good transition, provide a lot of opportunity, flexibility, and the reward for doing that full time. So that's awesome. So, well, now as we've already reached the present day of your journey, a great time to transition to the 2 questions I always like to ask at the end of each episode. So we'll jump to those now. So the first question I'd like to ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made, and what did you learn from it?
I think it kind of goes back to the fear of launching, the vulnerability of putting yourself out there. And there's been multiple times where I haven't, put out an offer or paid for advertising or connected with a marketing or an outreach person. Having fear kind of drive some of my decisions in this process, I think has been extremely, it's delayed and stunted some of my potential success. And I think it's a continual learning of the worst case scenario probably isn't that bad. There's a recovery stage, there's a pivot stage, there's, maybe money will solve the problem, maybe time will solve the problem, maybe just hustle will solve the problem. I'm not sure. But I think it's a continual practice of get out of your own damn head, take action, see where it leads you, and work it from there. And I think from what I have found, a lot of entrepreneurs, even the ones that I have seen to be extremely successful and confident, driven, and like they have it all together, it's given me humbleness to know that the people I really admire and look up to and want to be one day, we're on some of the same mental wavelength there. So maybe some of your listeners who are in their early stage of their entrepreneur journey feel like they need to have it all together. You don't. One thing that's allowed me to kind of overcome a lot of that fear and that anxiety is the mindset of, I don't know, but let me go figure it out. And that simple sentence allows for freedom, allows for growth, allows for the relief of not knowing everything all the time. But as long as you have the gumption, the courage, and you can leverage resources, you can really go figure any big problem out as long as you put your mind to it.
Awesome. Well, definitely a great mistake to learn from, and great learnings to take away from it. So now I'm going to transition to the second question I like to ask at the end of the episode, which is, so now if you're talking to somebody that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what would be the one piece of advice you give them?
I think ask for help as often as you need it. Kind of going back to what I said previously, it's like, I think a lot of us, especially, small business owners, solo entrepreneurs like myself, we feel like we have to wear all the hats all the time and be the best hat wearer. And there's somebody out there who knows way more than you, who is an expert, who lives and breathes the things that you're struggling with. And not the cost, but the investment you'll make in that partnership will absolutely pay itself back, whether it's in pure income and revenue, whether it's lessons learned, whether it's time saved. So go out there and ask for help, and maybe you'll get it for free. Maybe you'll get it relatively inexpensively. But if you think you have to know all of it all the time, you're doing yourself a disservice. So go out there, ask for help. It's something, that I've it's a lesson I continue to learn, is that magically the more help I ask for, the more help I get. So go out there and be vulnerable and ask for that help. And then, on the flip side of that, make sure to offer as much help as you can. Because if you can continue to kind of put those social and emotional deposits into your network, not if, but when you will need to make a withdrawal, people will be willing to hand out that support in droves.
No, I think that's definitely some great piece of advice. And going out, sometimes people are going to say no, or I don't have the bandwidth, I don't have the time to help, and you should be ready and willing to accept that answer. And you'll also find a lot of people are willing to help out and to give you a helping hand, and they've been there and been through that, and they're willing to help those others along, or similarly in the similar path along the way. So that's a great takeaway. So, well, now as we do wrap up the episode, if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
Yeah. So please connect with me on LinkedIn. It's Kolby Goodman, Kolby is the first name, Goodman, just like it sounds. If you're looking for career help, you're stuck in where you're at and you're trying to figure out your next steps, whether that is continuing into a different path than your traditional 9-to-5 W-2 career, or you're trying to figure out entrepreneurship, please feel to reach out. Also, too, if you're looking to ask for that help and bring on that help full time, I also help companies optimize their candidate experience. So if you're suffering from high turnover, if you're suffering from quick turnover, people are quitting your company in less than 6 or 12 months, or if you're finding it extremely hard, if not impossible, to navigate the employer side of job searching, going through applications, pre-screens, getting the right people in, please feel to reach out. In the 4,000 plus people I've helped, I've heard every horror story in the book. And so leveraging those lessons, leveraging that perspective, helping high achieving and suffering leaders optimize their candidate experience so they can get the help they need inside now.
Awesome. Well, I definitely encourage people to reach out, support a great business, and if nothing else, make a new best friend. So with that, thank you again, Kolby, for coming on the podcast. It's been fun. It's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you other listeners who are out there, if you have your own journey to share and you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, we'd love to have you. Just go to inventiveguest.com, apply to be on the show. A couple more things as listeners. Make sure to click share, subscribe, leave us a review. It helps us to reach even more startups and small businesses to help them along their journey to success. And on that note, if you ever need help with your startup or your small business with patents or trademarks or anything else along your journey, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat. We're always here to help. Well, thank you again, Kolby, for coming on the podcast, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Awesome. Thanks, Evan. Appreciate it.